Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sander Lanch podcast. Today, we read chapters 5 and 6 of The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, wherein things don't go for Shallan the way that she thought they were going to go. And, they really don't go well. And then things don't go well for Kaladin either. We talked about how they couldn't get worse. Well, they got worse. So, I'm Data, and with me today is
Jamie,
Dak, and Joe.
So hang on to something, everybody. The Sander Lanch is about to begin.
Fear in the blade, the spirits of the fallen faith, soil and degrade, my legacy and name, penned in the code, the father duty long bestowed, burdened by the shame. When order dies, there will be no pride in victory. When honor dies, I will be denied by history. I give my everything, return the reckoning. Flare of the ghost fills my eyes. When honor dies.
So yeah, we read 2 chapters this time, but before we get into those, I want to we're gonna break the mold a little bit. We're gonna break from tradition, and there's an email that I want to put up front that to discuss at the beginning of the podcast because it's kind of it's kind of relevant to
Oh my god.
the podcast as a whole, and I want to get your guys' opinions. So
Wait, what's happening?
somebody joined the Discord the other day and was like, "Hey, does anybody know how I can get in contact with Data to like give some feedback on the podcast?" And people are like, "Well, I mean, there's the email address that gets said every episode, and although that's it, apparently it's really common for people to maybe just tune out by the end of the episode because there are a lot of people who are like, "Hey, is there an email address for them or whatever?" And I'm just like, "Why do I even do it? Why do I even do this every episode?" But anyway, and then they're like, "Or you could just talk in the Discord. Data is here." So.
Yeah. He set this up.
This person, Clint, emailed and says, "Hi guys, I want to thank you for creating such an entertaining podcast. It's been awesome to take this Cosmere journey alongside you guys. I'm reading the books in a different order than you guys and thought it would be no issue as I planned on simply skipping the episodes of books I haven't read. I recently listened to your final episode of Warbreaker read and was excited to hear your thoughts on it. Unfortunately, one person mentioned a major spoiler for the Lost Metal, and that left me pretty bummed out. I understand that you give spoiler warnings, but I wasn't really expecting to be spoiled on a completely different book/series. I'm not asking for much more than a little carefulness when mentioning events from other books, and the only reason I make this request is because I do enjoy listening and following along with you guys. I'm very excited for you to read The Way of Kings and hope you enjoy it as much as I do, and that's it." So it spawned a discussion in the Discord, and I wanted to get you guys' takes on it because my general feeling has always been that it's like, well, the whole point of the show is that we're making these connections to older books and we're going to be talking about these things. And we've mentioned on the show several times that it's like, spoilers for things that you haven't read. But it's something that's occurred to me several times over the last year, especially when people email and like, "Yeah, I skipped the Elantris episodes because I haven't read that yet," or "I'm going to go back and listen to these things later after I've read it." And it kind of came to a head on this one when someone's finally like, "You spoiled the end of the Lost Metal for me." And so, I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there anything that we can do to like address those kind of concerns without just like changing the whole point of what we're doing?
So here's how I see it. So the issue is two-pronged in my opinion. The first is these people that are skipping around in the podcast, that's not how our podcast is meant to be listened to, in my opinion. My opinion is if you were going to listen to our podcast, you should start at the beginning. That's what I would do with any podcast that I would listen to. That's my expectation for anybody who's going to listen to our podcast is that they're going to start at the beginning. My other thing is we could make arrangements, but this person admitted themselves that they don't even know how to get in touch with you, so they don't listen all the way through the episode to the emails section. And so the normal thing that you would do in a podcast like this is you would make a timestamp code on the description of the episode saying, "Hey, during this time, during the episode, we talk about this thing," right? But if somebody's not even listening all the way through the episode to hear when the email section is or what our email address is, I doubt they're going to read the description of each episode. So I really don't feel like this is something that's on us. I feel like we could add the time codes if we wanted to be nice. I feel like that's a easy way to kind of take care of this, but it's really I feel like it's on the listener to decide whether or not they're going to actually listen to a podcast or just jump around. So, I mean, that's how I feel about it. I don't mean to offend anybody or alienate anybody that wants to listen to us, but I also don't think it's our job to make sure things aren't spoiled for people when the only things we talk about are things we've already talked about on our podcast. It's not like you're bringing in a bunch of information that we've never talked about and then putting it into the podcast.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring that up now. And honestly, if it had come up, I would have done this on our first episode of The Way of Kings, because I expect that Stormlight, we may get new people listening now that we started Stormlight who are like, oh, I like Stormlight, I want to listen about that. So this would have been a great discussion to have like 3 weeks ago or whatever. But we're still early on. Hopefully, I haven't spoiled anything for anybody. So I want to try to get this going. So yeah, you have some good points.
I pretty much agree with everything Jerry said. I do think this may sound selfish or arrogant, but it is the truth of the matter is this podcast is the journey, our journey, the three of us through the Cosmere for the first time, and the order that we have taken. So like we're not just we're not scholars reading Brandon's books and picking them apart. Like, we are experiencing it for the first time. We are connecting what we're reading now to what we've already read previously. So I do think that anything we have read previously is fair game for discussion of any point. And if that is some of the more recent books, then sorry, but if we've read it, like, it's going to come up for discussion. I mean, half the time, like, when we mention something from previous books, like, it can come out of nowhere. We don't even realize, oh, that connects to this. And we'll say something that could potentially be construed as a spoiler. So it's going to come up. And I think if we try and stifle that, it will stifle some of the discussion that we're having. So I understand people like saying, oh, I haven't read that book yet, so I'll save those episodes. But the fact of the matter is, like, once we read it, there's every possibility that it will come up in discussion again later. So, like,
with how connected the universe is and how we're actually actively looking for possible connections. Yeah, I agree. It would be hard to not.
Yeah, like, I am sorry if we spoil some stuff for some people, but I think ultimately, like, we are going through this in a certain order and connecting what we have read to what we are reading. So anything we have read previously is fair game for discussion. I'm more than happy to put spoiler warnings up and just say, like, in this episode, we will spoil the ending of The Lost Metal, or we talk about such and such. And, like, yeah, sure, like, we'll bring that up.
Yeah.
But, like,
we could even, and if we mark down what we've discussed in the podcast that could be spoilery at the end of the episode, then we could just record while we're still recording. We could say, we could do like, hey, guess what, guys, in this week's episode, we do talk about XYZ. And then you could just cut that and put it at the front of the episode if you want. That's
true. I that is one of the things that I'd considered, is doing that. But part of the issue, at least for me with that, is I don't always remember where some of this stuff is from. If we're talking about Harmony and something Harmony did, it's like, which book did, or was it not even a book? Was it like a Word of Brandon or an annotation that I read you guys that brought this piece of information in that we're using to theorize? And our Words of Brandon or annotations, are they spoilers? They're kind of spoilery, maybe. So even like tracking what things we're spoiling each episode, I feel like it's kind of difficult.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to make anybody not want to listen, but at the same time, like Dax said, like, this is our journey through the Cosmere. Of course, we want to invite people along, but why don't you start at the beginning with us? Even if you've already read that stuff, or if maybe you don't want to read that just now, take a break from our podcast and come back.
Yeah, let's make.
And also,
it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and it's like, I think the burden, because of how prolific Brandon is, how much we've already read of his, I think the burden for us would be too large in order to either A, try to steer away from spoilery type conversations, or B, try to mark every single one that we have. Because it could be an offhand comment where we're drawing comparisons and being like, yeah, this reminds me of this part of this other book. So, like, yeah I get it, but at the same time,
someone suggested, like, before they say something spoiler, they could be like, hey, I'm about to spoil this. And someone else was like, no, that would completely break the flow of the show, and like it wouldn't work.
You would assume I would remember to do that, because
exactly,
I just ramble like a motherfucker.
Yeah, look, I think the guys have got some really good points, and I completely agree. I think Dak and Joe both said it. This is our journey through the Cosmere, and Data guiding us through that. And I mean, apart from, I guess, like, big spoilers of, hey, this is how the book ended. You know, I think that sometimes we don't even really know if we're going to spoil something. Like, we could just say something and
Mm-hmm.
so it doesn't really tie in that much. But then for other people, it's big spoilerific. So I'm really sorry that your experience, is it Clint?
Yeah, Clint.
Yeah, like, you know, no one wants to have the book ruined for them, and I'm sorry if we did that. Still read it. I think you'll still love it. But yeah, we do. It is hard. I reckon we could probably put something at the start of the episodes to go, look, we do talk about the end of the Lost Metal or something like that. But just generally speaking, comments wise, I think it'd be really hard to keep a track of. And we definitely don't want to like lose or alienate any of the listeners. Thank you for coming with us on the journeys. But yeah, I guess it is and it's something that we've spoken about before, is that we're not spoiling future things that we haven't read, but if we have read it, it's fair game. So
right. I suspect they didn't actually say, but I suspect in this case it was somebody mentioned Lost Metal spoiler. I think somebody mentioned like Wayne's death, and so it's like, oh yeah, okay, that would be a spoiler if you hadn't read that. Huh? But yeah, the best I could come up with in the discussions, and it did, like I said, prompt a lot of discussion, a lot of good opinions, and like very, very personable and like friendly, you know, like disagreements, but everyone respected everybody else's opinion, sort of thing. It was really nice to see actually how cool the people in our Discord are. But I think the best that I could come up with was that we could add a generic, because the big thing for me, I guess, is a person coming in and listening to, for instance, our first Stormlight episode fresh. They wouldn't have heard any of the previous warnings that, oh, by the way, we're going to spoil stuff that, like, everything that we've already read is fair game. And it didn't occur to me hey, we might have new listeners, especially on this episode. Maybe we should mention that again. So we could put like a generic, just add to the opening spiel. By the way, this podcast will be spoilers for everything that we've read already. We don't even have to list out everything. It could be like, you know, just FYI, go and look. If you haven't read some of the stuff we've already read, then you could be spoiled. But I don't know that on every single episode that's even useful, because on the one hand, as somebody already mentioned, as Joe I think mentioned, it's like you're gonna gloss over it. Like people gloss over the email address all the time at the end of the episode. Something that kind of standard and for me, I don't think is going to impact necessarily. Maybe a first time listener coming and finding a random episode for the first time might recognize that and be like, okay, I'm out. But and then every other person who listens, who's not that one person who's listening for the first time, we're just adding pointlessness to the beginning of the episode for them. So I don't even know if that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Maybe
I mean,
it's too late. It's probably too late now that we're through what we're through. But at the start of each new book, you could go and talk about. So if anyone was joining for the first time for that book specifically, presumably would start at the beginning of that book. If you're already a listener, then you already know what we're talking about. But if you're just joining for that book, like, you're not going to come in midway through the book. And now I realize that now we've started our like not last book, but definitely series.
Big
I feel
series.
like the journey for Stormlight, we've already missed the boat on that. But maybe in the future we could just put something at the front.
Yeah, that was my main thing, was like, this, if I'd had this thought like, 3 years ago.
yeah.
But at this point it feels a little late in the game to make that change when we're kind of past it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
well, let's look at it this way. This is we're talking about Stormlight, but this is our first Stormlight episode where we had mentioned spoilers from a different episode, or excuse me, spoilers from a different book, because we did mention the same spoiler once again in this episode.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe
this
episode,
time, so.
right? Maybe this episode is the one to do it. So here you go. Hey guys, it's Joe from the Sanderlands here. Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you listening so very much. I want to let you guys know that as we go through these books, we're going to reference everything possibly that we've ever read in the past on our podcast. So if you're not familiar, or if you're a first-time listener, we've read through Mistborn Era 1, Mistborn Era 2, Elantris, Warbreaker, several of Brandon's short stories, including Secret History. So any of those topics are fair game during our podcast. So if you haven't read all of those books, I encourage you, go read them, go listen to our podcast from the beginning. We'd love for you to take this journey with us. Thanks for listening.
Also,
Hey.
White Sand. I think you missed that one.
I said several short stories and other things.
I didn't think of that as a short story, but yeah, maybe you're right.
yeah.
Great
We get the
do-up.
picture. It's easy for people just to go through the episode listing, because the title of every book is in like
The title.
whatever episode we're doing it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You can put that at the front of
Isn't
this
it-
one since this is the first spoiler one we've had since Stormlight started.
We talk in the emails as well. Like we've had questions about, what was I think since we started Stormlight, what was the biggest shocking thing about
Oh yeah.
Warbreaker? So we then talked about all the end of Warbreaker, which is not a series, but while we're not bringing it up in our general conversation, we do get people asking us about comparisons and thoughts. And then we definitely, spoiler alert, spoke about Blushweaver's death and who, oh God, my memory of characters' names, like the main guy that was actually Vasher, yeah. I knew it started with a V.
Yeah.
We knew about who he was. So we've definitely given away some big stuff in the ending of books. And because we're being asked those questions at the end of the episodes as well. So whether email questions become a, hey, if you don't want to be spoiled for anything, maybe don't tune into the emails. I don't know.
Yeah, but I feel like we discuss things even outside of the email. So that's why it's like,
Yeah.
I feel
Well,
like it's just too tricky for us to try to just steer people away without just saying like, hey, we talk about everything we've talked about before. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to in any way discourage that, because I think that's a lot of the fun. It's for listeners to be like seeing if you guys make connections or your theories about connections. And so trying to censor that, I feel like, is exactly the opposite of what we want to do. So
I still have one of my favorite memories of this show is like we're halfway through Elantris, and then I've connected to a dot to something we read in Secret History prior. Then it's gone, hey, wait a fucking minute, those people were Elantrans.
yep,
yeah.
great,
Or,
exactly the kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is when me and Dak joke about what's his name being the pirate chef king.
Oh
And,
my god,
then-
that was the fucking best.
And then it turns out to be true.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you guys at least were thinking basically along the same lines that I was, because a lot of the stuff that you guys said were the exact thoughts that I was having. So I want to make sure that we're all in the same place, and apologize to anyone. Honestly, as the person leading the discussion, this should have been something that I thought of early on and was prepared for. But it's one of those things where it's like, well, in my brain, that's how it works. That's how it's going to work in everybody else's brain, right? Like they're going to think of it the same way that I do, but obviously not necessarily. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Do genuinely feel sorry if we spoiled stuff for people. I think Lost Metal's probably the turning point because it is such a recent book, whereas Warbreaker and most of the others are 10 plus years old now.
True.
But at the end of the day, like, I swear this is not the first time we've talked about this. It's like we've mentioned before, like obviously not at the start of the episode, but like anything we read previously is fair game, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but I mean, you gotta be listening to every episode to get that. So if you're
Sure.
you may not hear that.
That's a good.
But
that's a
no,
good point.
like I do get it, Clint. I'm, please don't hear me saying I don't care about you, because that's not the case. Especially with Lost Metal, you're right. Like that is a very recent book. It came out last year, and we didn't even know that we were going to read it that soon. Data had to read through it real fast. Yeah, Data had to read through it real fast to make a decision on whether or not we were going to read it at that time. And it just so happened that he thought, yeah, this is a good time to read this book. So that was a different experience even for Data, because previous to this, he had read everything that we talk about on the show more than once, I feel like. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No,
But
absolutely.
at this point, it was like he had read it once and then maybe once more before we started. I don't even know.
Yeah, it was, and honestly, you guys may start to get some inklings in this very book about why the thought was to potentially delay that one.
Yeah, I mean, Lost Metal, I will say Lost Metal is kind of a blur for me. Like, I remember some of the major plot points, but some of the like more secret-y Kelsier and crew stuff, I'm like I don't have a super good memory for that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've established now for anyone listening that this is how it works, and so probably my main encouragement is going to be, if you're worried that we might potentially spoil something, then put the show on pause, come back when you've read whatever you're worried about us potentially spoiling. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be out there for you, and I'm just as happy for someone to enjoy our podcast a year from now as I am if you are enjoying it today. It's not, we're not pulling down big ad revenues from all the ads we have on the show for people listening the first week. I don't care when you listen, just enjoy it.
Yeah. You can be one of those people who emails us and then here's their email like a year later.
Right. Yeah. Okay, well,
Yeah.
thanks.
What must that be like? Like you just hear yourself from the past and you're like, oh yeah, I wrote that.
You might even forget if your name's like a common name, you might forget that you wrote it. You're like, that person made a lot of good points that I might have made if it had.
Oh, self high five.
Yep.
This is
okay.
this perfect avenue to be like, hello from the world of tomorrow.
It's true. It is.
Yeah, all while we were talking about like this is our journey, I just kept thinking of Final Fantasy X. This is my story.
You tell him, was Yuna
Yeah.
that or, yeah, okay. I was about to say.
No, it's Titus, but then Spoonie makes the joke that it is actually Yuna's story and that
It is totally Yuna's story. Titus does not deserve. Anyway, sorry. We've taken away from the actual episode long enough. So thanks everybody for bearing with us. I apologize if we spoiled anything for you. Hopefully we've kind of sorted out where we're gonna stand on that. I'm still not sure if it makes sense to put a generic thing like Joe did at the beginning of every episode, or maybe just the first episode of a new book. We can think on that. But anyway, moving
Just
on.
put it at the head of this episode, then make a decision later.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, maybe that's something to throw to the Discord.
Yeah, no, that was part of the discussion that we had in the Discord, and I feel like the majority were kind of on the same page as we are. So it's good to know that other people thought the same way also, I guess.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think of these two chapters, going back to the chapters of sadness, as I will call them?
Yeah, well, I mean, it sucks to be Kaladin, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
That poor guy. That sounds just horrific. And I just remember thinking when they put him up the front, I was like, oh man, this can't be good. Whatever's about to happen to this guy is going to suck. Like if this didn't suck already, it's about to get suckier. Yeah, I really hope things turn around for him. And I like that his Windspren friend is still around, someone to watch out for him. But man, I hope things look up. And Shalyn, I quite enjoyed her interactions with her, hopefully to be mentor, but was also super pleased that she's got her own agenda happening. I feel like we got a little glimmer of something more going on with her, and I think she's very cool. I'm stoked to read a bit more about her. Yeah, things sort of not exactly going the way that was planned, but sort of going the way things were planned. Yeah, I like it. And it was good. I kind of sort of like she's exactly where she needs to be right now. I'm really curious as to why she wants the names. Seriously, my brain is
Soulcaster.
gone. The Soulcaster, why she wants that, and why did her father have one? And yes, I have lots of questions there, but looking forward to seeing where that's going.
Yeah, at this point, I like Shallan's story at this point, and like you said, I'm there's all sorts of stuff that I'm like, ooh, I want to know more about what, like after the reveal at the end of her chapter, it's like, oh, okay, this is getting interesting. I want to know more about this. Kaladin's story at this point, it's kind of like, I'm sad. Like I don't.
Oh, it just sucks. Like it just sucks, and I'm prepared that he's got like half a book of just it sucks before anything looks up for him, but it's just bad. I just feel for the guy. At this point, you're kind of just going, you know what? I hope you get some relief, man. When you're lying there going, don't wake me up. Just leave me here. Like, poor thing.
Yeah, and honestly, it clearly sucks to be all of these guys who have ended up on these bridges. So we don't know any of the other ones personally enough to, be as sad for them as we are for Kaladin. But this is not a place to be.
No, you definitely do not want to be at the battlefront. You don't want to be a bridgeman. I was with them. I was like, oh, they're going to go build some bridges. Cool. That's not terrible. Oh no. And we saw them all like eating their slop and dirty and not happy. And I was like, I get the feeling these guys aren't lumberjacking outside. Like this is bad.
Yep. I like you're just like, I'm prepared for it to go on for a while and be sad, but fingers crossed that maybe that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah, I do hope things turn around for him. I think he's a really interesting character. He's got so much more knowledge. When he's like, oh, well, that could cure that person, that could help with that. I'd suggest it, but I don't like you. I think he's got like a bit of wit, but he's smart. He's obviously good on the battlefield. Is quite a complex character and could be so much more than where they put him. But I hope he gets an opportunity to then kind of break out and and use that information. And whereas I feel like now he's just the guy that survived the front line. And what's his name? The
sergeant?
The sergeant.
Gaz.
The 3 name. Gaz. I want to call him Zach, and I knew that was wrong. Really bad. I'm gonna actually have to start writing these names down. Gaz. Gaz is just gonna be mad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How dare you survive? Like, you were supposed to die.
How inconvenient for me.
Yeah.
Fucking Gary.
Wait, who's Gary?
Gaz. That's
okay.
Yeah, you
In
get
Australia.
yeah, you get names like Gary or Barry, and they get shortened to Gaz or Gaza and Baz and Bazza and stuff like that. So as soon as I saw Gaz come up, I'm just like, fucking Gary. All right.
Okay.
All right, Gaza, you fucking prick. Yeah, no, fuck that guy. Fuck him with the heat of 1,000 flaming suns. Yeah, man.
Any Garys.
This specific one. Yeah, no, like, this was just horrific. Like, I did not expect any of this for Kaladin. This section was really well written, because I was just spent the whole time horrified, just going, what the fuck is this? And everything he's going through, the poor bastard next to him, who seemed like a genuinely good dude, just dying unceremoniously. So Kaladin was the only one left in the front line. It's like, that whole section was just messed up. So, yeah, curious to see how Kaladin comes out of this, but I have absolutely no idea how, because it just seems like, all right, yep, you're fucked, mate. Shallan's story was kind of interesting, but I'm just like, okay, more high society stuff with kings and everything, cool. Yasna's, your high lady, a bit egotistical, but I mean, she has the magic power to back it up, so there's that. But then it got to the very last thing, where she's like, I'm gonna steal that thing. I'm like, oh, you've got my attention. Let's see this. Huh? So, yeah, that section was like, yeah, it's kind of interesting, but not quite grabbing me. And then she threw out, I'm gonna steal it, and I'm just like, cool, I'm all in on this now. Let's see what you do.
It's like, oh, I'm with you now. Okay, yeah, let's robbery. That's the way to Daxheart.
Well, no, I feel like we've seen quite a lot of high society politicking and living and shenanigans in the last few books. And it's like, all right, cool, let's see some thieving.
Yeah, okay, no, I'm on board with that. I mean, thieving is where we got our start back in Mistborn: The Final Empire. So. Yeah,
my mind did go there. I'm just like, oh, we haven't had a proper like crime arc in a while.
But she seems so new to all of this that I'm just like, are you going to be able to do it though? Come on. Is she even going to be able to get taken on as a ward at this point is the real question, because that doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
Not unless she pulls something severely, just wondrous out of her ass.
Mm-hmm.
Funny stuff, these chapters. No, the Shallan stuff, it was interesting. I'm definitely interested to know more about Yasna. She's the most interesting female character to me so far. Shallan does have a little bit of interest with her, oh no, I'm going to steal stuff. But I guess like that plan makes way more sense than what you as a reader are expected to believe the plan is, which is like she's somehow going to dig her house out of poverty by becoming this lady's ward, because really that would take years and years. And it sounds like they need something to happen pretty immediately. So her stealing something of great value seems to make a lot more sense. But yeah, interested for sure. Yasna is very interesting, getting to see a little bit more magical powers. And then Kaladin, yep, sad stuff, but also, it's not boring. He's not sitting in a cage now.
It's true.
He's carrying a bridge across the battlefield. I think he's gonna win Gaz over. I think that's what's gonna happen. Gaz is gonna be the reluctant sergeant who's like, all right, you're all right, kid, I guess. And then, yeah, we get introduced to, his little Windspread friend has a nickname, which I believe Data probably remembers better than I do, because I didn't know who was cosplaying as what, but I'm pretty sure there were several Syl cosplayers at the convention last year. So
yeah, I think so. That sounds right.
So yeah, it was cool. I'm enjoying it. This book hasn't had a misstep so far, in my opinion. I think it's pretty good. So we're only 6 chapters in or whatever, but it's good stuff so far.
Yeah, like you said, I believe there were some cosplays, and I messed up. I don't know if you guys noticed last week. I forgot that we had not been told her name yet, and so I was just like, oh yeah. So when Syl says this, I'm like, shit. And I caught myself like immediately and had to fumble.
Did not notice a thing.
And then I left that in the episode where normally, if I fumble something ridiculously, I'll just cut it out. But I was like, I think that the listeners will appreciate this fumble in particular, and so I got to leave that in there for them. But yeah, I like your perspective, Joe. I was worried that these first chapters, you in particular, might be like, oh, this is depressing. I don't want to read a depressing. But I like this perspective. It's like, at least it's interesting. It's more interesting than him sitting in a cage, unable to do anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really captured my imagination so far about this book is what I mentioned last week. Is like everything's alive. Like everything, I feel like nothing's going to waste here. Like everything has something going on with it. Even the way they talk about the stone, it's like it's got something going on with it. And so yeah, I think everything is pretty cool so far.
Okay. Yeah, and we're continuing to learn all sorts of things about this place.
This is horrible, but it's not boring.
And actually, you guys may remember also last week, like after Dak got done with some outrageous thing, I was just like, I don't even remember what I was going to say now. After the end of the episode, I remembered that I was curious because it wasn't until this episode that we see what the shattered plane is. I was curious, like, what do you guys think the shattered plane is going to be? Like, what image does that evoke? So I guess now that we've kind of seen what it means to be a shattered plane to some degree, like, what do you guys think of this just as a landscape? It seems so unusual to me.
No, I hadn't really thought about it that much, to be honest. We're kind of in the back seat being driven around by Brandon at this point of the book. I guess now that we've seen it a little bit more, I never really thought about it being like manufactured, I guess. Like I just sort of thought it was just an area. I didn't really think about it being so like sculpted. It sounds like it's been sculpted by Soul. I've just forgotten them again. Soul.
What, the Soul Caster?
Casters. Like carvers? Don't know.
Interesting. Okay.
That's kind of what it sounded like to me, that they'd like forged it out of like all these caverns and holes and stuff. I don't know. That's kind of what I picked up reading through it. Whether that's the case or not, I don't really know. But
okay, interesting take. All right.
Sounds pretty barren, all like stripped of everything.
It does. Yeah, a little bit.
Not to drop back again on Final Fantasy X, but it made me think of like the Calm Lands and like the giant chasm that they fought Sin and created this giant chasm in this land. It made me think of that. So like it almost strikes me as like this is the place where they perpetually do battle. Like that is what this place is used for, is fighting. That's all they use it for. That's the main reason that the people that they're fighting there is because like that is the battlefield. And maybe like it's perpetually been a battlefield for like generations because there was some great battles there. Maybe that's where the prologue takes place. I don't know, but that's
interesting. Yeah.
It just like, it just strikes me as like a barren wasteland full of these giant chasms that like you have to, that just go like deep into the planet's core, and you're just going to die if you fall in. So
yeah. Who knows what's down there? How deep does it go?
Yeah, like you take the Final Fantasy references out of what Joe said, and it's pretty much word for word what I thought.
Okay. I thought all that, but not Final Fantasy. Yeah, okay. I got you. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, like I said, that was something that I meant to hit at the end of the last episode, but did not. So here we go.
Once again, I ruined it.
No, Dak saved it.
Question last week. If you had asked that question last week, I don't know, in my head, I had just like a big grassy field that they just all were going to battle on. I don't know. I didn't know really what to expect, but we'd seen so many of the like Spren coming out. I just assumed it was going to be like this big open field that was not like as grim. And I don't know why it was sort of a pleasant, peaceful looking place to me, even though I knew it was going to be for battle. It was weird.
You're like, yeah, I don't know what to do with the shattered part, so I just took the plains part and went with that.
Exactly, and just go with it,
Okay, nice.
But I guess if it's shattered, that's why you have a whole bunch of chasms and things. That's why you need all the bridges, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess let's get into these. I think we've gone like an hour now without actually starting the book. So, chapter 5, it's called Heretic, and the I almost said prologue. Jeez, the epigraph. I have seen the end and have heard it named, the night of sorrows, the true desolation, the Everstorm. Subject was a dark-eyed youth of unknown origin. So, all right, that's helpful. So we meet Yasna for the first time. I'm gonna call her Jasna sometimes because that's how I've always thought about it in my head. I'm trying to fix it. And she's just like, oh wow, she's really pretty. I did not expect her to be so pretty. Also, Shallan's like, she's just stupid tall. Why are Lethe so freaking tall? She's like, I just thought she'd be like this ugly spinster. How else could one picture a heretic well into her mid-30s and still unmarried? Oh God, her mid-30s.
Okay. Wow. That's quite a statement.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to remember back to Elantris, where Serene was an old spinster because she was like 25 and unmarried or something like that. So we're improving? Question mark.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't want to throw this on Brandon, but it sounds like he's into child brides, is what I'm.
Oh. Wow, that's a take. All right.
Nah, I'm just joking. I wouldn't assume that.
When the average life expectancy is like 38, I guess.
Okay, that's fair. And so she comes up and finds Yasna in conversation with a man wearing the Cabranthian royal colors of burnt orange and white, which makes me look like a UT fan or something. And it takes her a little bit to realize who she's talking to. Yasna is talking to the king of Kharbranth, which, as she points out, like it's an independent city-state, while Yasna is the sister of the king of one of the most powerful nations on the planet. So in measure of real power, she may be more powerful than this guy, but still, this is the king. And we see the soul caster, which is 2 rings and a bracelet connected by several chains holding a triangular group of gemstones across the back of the hand. So it gives you a nice description to kind of picture what this looks like. Reminds me of if anyone's a Stargate SG-1 fan, they've got like the gold hand device. And we find out this is identical to the one that she and her brothers had found inside her father's pocket, or coat pocket rather. So right away, it's like, oh, hey, there's some more stuff going on here. Of course, you don't know what a soulcaster is quite yet, so I guess maybe that doesn't seem super relevant at this point. And so Yasna is warning this the guy that we will find out is the king. It's like, you realize that the devotaries will have an unfavorable reaction to this. And the king's like, oh no, yeah, I know, but you don't need to worry about me. She says, the Ardents have much sway here, your majesty. He's like, no, it'll be fine. And then she's like, okay, can we put this on pause for a second? I have to go talk to this person. And he's like, oh yeah, go ahead, you do you, as we're walking to wherever we're going. And so Shallan is worried she's going to be mad because it's taken her so long to catch up. And Yasna is not upset about that. She's like, oh no, that's my fault. I didn't know where I was going to be when I first talked to you, so I just had to leave notes as I went. I'm impressed by your tenacity. Perhaps I will allow you to petition me for a place as my ward. And she's like, wait, what? I thought that this was a done deal. And she's like, oh, no. I gave you permission to meet me, which is already me being way generous, clearly. I'm just that cool. But a wardship is, a whole other thing. That's going to require more. I need to know more about you before that. And so she wants to know about Shallan's existing education. And some of this stuff is stuff that even to us should be pretty obvious. Like she talks about music. How good are you with music? And she's like, well, I'm good with the voice, but I can play the zither and the pipes. And then as they're walking down the hall with the king nearby, Yasna's just like, okay, well, sing this thing for me. She's like, what, really? Right here? Yeah. Okay. And we find out she speaks some languages: Alethi, Thaylen, Azish. What about your writing? I know all of the major, minor, and topical glyphs and can paint them calligraphically. So can most children. So,
yeah, man, she's got opinions, this lady.
Yeah. Shallan's like, well, I've kept a journal since I was a child to practice my writing skills. And she's like, great. If I need someone to write a treatise on their stuffed pony or give an account of an interesting pebble they discovered, I shall send for you. Which, damn, girl. Okay.
Hey, man, that pebble stopped a revolution.
Yeah, don't be like that. It's my pebble.
But I do like, she's like, well, I wrote you a letter and it was persuasive enough to convince you to meet me. And Jasna's like, yes, that's a good point. It took you long enough to make it. But yeah, okay. And then she's asking about, she starts asking about people. Like, have you read this guy's books or this guy's books? Or Shaka daughter Hasweth, which there's a name formation. And Shallan's like, no.
Didn't Szeth have that kind of name? Szeth, son of something like that?
Yes, he did. Good catch. That is an indication that person is from the same place as Szeth.
Yep.
Although this is Shaka daughter Hasweth, and he was Szeth's son Volano, so a little bit different. Maybe his dad wasn't cool enough, so he has to go by his granddad's name. It's like
Yeah.
Worf being from the House of Moog.
Yeah. Also, I caught one of the names here was Noah Don. And I'm like, oh, you've mentioned a podcast about finding Noah Don.
I think he's
Or something.
following Noah Don. But yes,
Following-
good,
yeah.
good catch there. That maybe that guy will be relevant later. Who knows?
Well, if enough people are following him.
Yeah. There's just a whole podcast named after the guy. I'm sure he's no big deal.
There we go, spoiling stuff. I'm gonna blame who was it, Justin from Always Another Podcast. It's his fault. He spoiled this. This is what I
That's
get
true.
for letting him like into the show even that much. How dare he? That's a joke, Justin. It's okay. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned the name of that podcast before, but I like to blame him better. It works out for me. And I like when she talks about like, what about history? And she's like, well, I mean, I read all the history books that were in my dad's library. Okay, well, what were those? And she's like, well, this one set of books. And she's like, barely worth the time spent scribing them. History is the most important of the literary subarts.
Oh, shit. When did this woman become my dad?
Well, Joe got a degree in history, and I minored in history, so we probably agree with that to some degree. I would think.
My undergraduate degree's in history.
Nice. My dad worked as an historian for many years, so.
Ah.
Yeah.
And let's see. So yeah, they go back and forth a little more. Do you know this? What do you know about that? Blah blah blah. And then eventually Shallan's just like, look, if you expect me to be able to solve Fabrasen's conundrum with a wave of my hand, you will be disappointed. And she's like, well, don't I have a right to make reasonable demands of my potential students? And Shallan's like, okay, your demands are about as reasonable as the ones made to the 10 heralds on Proving Day. With all due respect, you seem to want master scholars as your ward. I might find a pair of 80-year-old ardents in the city who will maybe fit your requirements. And Yasna's just like, do you speak with such pique to your parents as well? Shallan, we established before, has a bit of a smart mouth. So
This gave me real like Pride and Prejudice vibes. I never saw such a woman. She would be a fearsome thing to behold. There is no one that could live up to this standard. Seriously.
yeah. Yasna's basically like, well, your mom should have taught you better than this. And she's like, well, I mean, my mom died, and also my stepmother died, so I'm on my own at this point. I'm trying to work this stuff out. And Yasna's like, well, maybe you should just go back to your dad and see to his estates rather than wasting my time. And then we find out that this is the 12th young woman to petition her for wardship this year. So she has no problem rejecting you. And Shallan's here like, oh, damn, I thought that maybe other like important women would stay away from her because she's a heretic. She's at odds with the religion that most people follow. But no, apparently not. Being the sister of a king and renowned for your scholarship in your own right is enough to draw people regardless. And then we find out what the king was negotiating with Yasna for. During the last high storm, there was a collapse. This building is built into the mountain, basically. And a huge rock fell and blocked off this one room. And they have not been able to remove it. And there are people, including, we find out, the king's granddaughter, trapped on the other side of this rock. The king's like, if only we had a shard blade, we could cut it up. But Yasna has made an agreement to get rid of the rock in exchange for access to the Polanium, which we heard that name before. I don't know that we know what that exactly is. And she says, send for some wet rags for people to put over, which it sounds random at that point. Like, okay, wet rags are going to help remove the rock. Got it.
The rock's having a baby. Get me some hot towels.
Give me as many wet rags as you can. We're going to erode this thing.
That would be a way to go at it, I guess.
It took 4 years.
I'm afraid what you heard was get me a lot of wet towels. What I said was get me all the wet towels that you have.
Well, Shallan does get one moment to kind of stand out where Yasna's like, how would you ascertain the mass of this stone? And Shallan's like, I mean, I'd probably just ask the king. I'm sure his architects calculated it. And Yasna's like, an elegant response. Did they do that, your majesty? He's like, yeah, they did.
Touché.
Yep. Well done. And so Yasna holds up her soulcaster and the gems start glowing. And there's a very dramatic moment of like light that Shallan like takes a mental picture of, committing the scene to memory, it says. And then Yasna's hand sinks into the rock and it vanishes. A burst of dense black smoke exploding into the hallway.
Man, if you do that wrong and snap your fingers wrong, it's like half of all life in the galaxy disappears.
Right? Exactly.
I know
Right,
about
that's
gem
it.
gloves.
And so what we find out is Yasna has a soul caster, a powerful one. 9 out of 10 were limited to a few transformations, creating water or grain from stone, forming bland single-roomed rock buildings out of air or cloth. But this one can affect any transformation, literally turning any substance into any other substance. So that's powerful.
I love how like they're so blasé about that. It's like, oh yeah, you're limited. You can make food out of nothing, or you can make a house out of air. Like, oh, that's very limited. Fucking hell, I would want that.
Well, and I don't know if you remember in the last Shalon section, we find out it's mentioned that emeralds are the most valuable because they can be used to make food.
I do remember that. Yeah.
And so at the time, you're probably like, well, how the fuck does that work? Well, here you go.
Take that, Hermione.
It's you and Gramps' laws of fundamental
Gosh up.
transfiguration or whatever. Oh, gosh.
Whatever it is. Yeah. You can't make food
Yeah.
here and nothing. Watch me.
Eat this, gush up.
But yes, so Yasna has a magic glove that can turn anything into anything. And I mean, I feel like it shouldn't. I think it's Jamie who's like, I want to see why she wants this. I mean, I feel like we could come up with lots of reasons that you could use something like this when your house is on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Even just going around selling the service of turning one thing into another would probably net you a shit ton of money.
I guess I was more curious as to whether did she or someone in her family actually have the ability to use it, or is she stones? Because obviously it's worth a lot. I don't know how you could go about selling them, but did something like her father's break or something and swap I don't know.
Right? Yeah, she has one that belonged to her dad, and so if she wants another one, there must be a reason. Yeah, fair point. And she thinks how it must grate on the Ardents that such a powerful holy relic was in the hands of someone outside the Ardentia, and a heretic no less. So we're finding out some more about the Ardents and the Ardentia as they get mentioned repeatedly. You may remember that in the previous episode it was mentioned that Ardents are the only kinds of slaves that you don't have to pay because they're not allowed to own anything, which sounds kind of in opposition to how powerful they sound here. But I don't know.
Maybe there's religious reasons or something.
And so Yasna basically tells her, it's like, look, this isn't going to work out. Sorry. And she's like, but no, you haven't finished interviewing me yet. And Yasna's like, wait, you're telling me I haven't finished what I was. Okay, no, really? It's like, yeah, you left out painting and drawing, the like super important feminine arts. And Yasna's like, well, I don't care about those. But these are like what Shalon is really good at. So Shalon's like, but no, but
She's like, but my portfolio.
And Yasna's like, no.
Yasna turns into every government department. It's like the visual arts are frivolity. Fuck you.
Yep, exactly. Schools don't need art classes.
What has
Music,
art done for us lately? Excuse me while I put on my favorite movie.
And so Yasna's just like, okay, well, I want to go to the Palladium now. That deal that we had. And the king's like, well, we're going to have a big celebratory feast. My granddaughter was saved. And she's like, yeah, well, I don't have time. I have stuff to do. He's like, I mean, okay.
All right, more feasting for me. Make
And
sure
so-
you grab those succulent virgins I saw on the way in. We're gonna feast on them. Wait, what? What?
Shalon is just thinking like, me from 6 months ago would have just started crying at this point. Like I've spent 6 months chasing this woman in 5 minutes here. And she's like, nah, see ya. But Shalon's just like, this is too important. I cannot take no for an answer here. And we find out that she wants to become Yasna's apprentice, essentially. Not for the education, not for the prestige, but to learn where she kept her soulcaster because Shalon was going to steal it. The end of chapter. And then we get a tiny map, a charcoal rubbing of a map of Sadius's war camp, as used by a common spearman. Scratched is what my book says, on the back of a palm-sized Kremling shell. So we get a little map of what a war camp looks like, even to the point of up here at the top is where the Shattered Plains are. And then chapter 6, Bridge 4. And the epigraph is, I'm cold, Mother. I'm cold. Mother, why can I still hear the rain? Will it stop? That one doesn't sound particularly weird to me. Maybe it wasn't raining. I don't know.
Sounds
scared,
pretty
dude.
weird to me. Yeah.
Daisy.
A 6-year-old female light-eyed child. All right. And we're back to Tavlakov, Which when Dax said like fucking Gary or whatever, I was like, is he talking about Tvlakov? Because really, it's kind of Tvlakov's fault. But
No. Like this. Remember last time? This is Crazy Vaclav from Crazy
true,
Vaclav's
yeah.
Place of Automobiles.
yep. I went back and watched the clip when I was editing that episode, and he's like, it will go like 13 hectares on one
Single tank of kerosene.
of kerosene. And I was like, but a hectare is like a square unit of measurement of distance. Like, how does that work for
That's
driving a
the
car? I
joke.
don't understand, but okay.
Yeah, it's the joke. It's genius.
But yes, so they're he pulls the slaves out, lines them up. Everyone told stories of that night when the Parshendi tribesmen had murdered King Gavilar nearly 6 years ago. So that's what this war is about out here, to avenge the king. And Kaladin's like, yeah, you don't mess around with the mercenaries when they're around real slaves, because they get like this need to look impressive and make it seem like they're important.
I believe that is what the young people call big dick energy now.
And Kaladin is like, yes, maybe I can get like a spear into my hands. Maybe I can face the enemy again. That's what I want. And here comes a light-eyed woman who is probably of the 4th or 5th Dawn, D-A-H-N. That's a wife and scribe to one of the camp's officers. And so she's inspecting the slaves. And she's like, most of these guys suck. Like, what am I going to use them for? They're too dirty to put into the kitchens. And that this is her negotiating posture to negotiate down from 2 emerald bromes ahead to something more reasonable. I feel like he goes down fast, too. He goes down 25% instantly, like maybe 1.5.
Yeah, I think Kaladin had the measure of him. He's kind of desperate.
Yeah. But then we get to Kaladin, and she's like, okay, now here, this one's more interesting. And then she tells him, like, take off your shirt. Do a little dance for me. No, she's not. It's not Magic Mike. But
Yeah. Take off your clothes. I won't hurt you.
and he says that he was from Amaram's army, a citizen second non. And Tvlakov's like, once a citizen. And the lady's like, oh, you got that danger glyph, huh? Where I come from, slaves that deserve those are just executed. And so he tries to make up a story that he got drunk, killed a guy. It was he made some mistakes, but I can use a spear, put me in the army, I'll be good. You won't regret it. And then Tvlakov's like, he's a deserter, don't listen to him, he's lying. Also, he's escaped a bunch of times, and honestly, he may have contaminated all the men in his wagon with talk of escape.
We really need to know what the fuck happened on that battlefield if he became a deserter.
Yeah, like he did not seem like a deserter, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Calvin's like, damn it, I should have torn up that guy's map. Like, I could have been in a good place if only I'd like gotten him on my side instead of, being a jerk.
Could have been a contender.
And so she's like, okay, for your honesty, I'll buy them anyway. Point me out the ones that have been contaminated. We need some new bridgemen. And so yeah, they're like, take those 10 to the bridge crews. Tell Lamoral and Gaz that the tall one is to be given special treatment. And so they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna be building bridges. That's not so bad, right? And some of the rest of the slaves get sent out to like chop down wood or whatever. Some even get sent to the kitchen, despite her saying they're too dirty to go to the kitchens. There's Parshmen out here, working, carrying. And he's like, I mean, they're fighting Parshmen. They're really just, they have them in their camp also, but nobody really seems to think of Parshmen as people. So they get to this place where there's these carpenters. And he's like, oh, we're going to be woodworkers, huh? You're joining the bridge crews. And here's a bunch of dirty guys sitting around looking depressed, wearing leather vests. And they're like, hey, here's some new recruits, Gaz. That one over there, special treatment. And Kaladin keeps trying to be like, I have military training. I was in High Lord Amaram's army. And Gaz is like, yeah, nobody gives a shit. Why are you still telling me this? Nobody cares at all. And then before anything can be explained, there's a chorus of horns. And Gaz is like, Stormfather, Bridgeman, up, you louts. You're in Bridge 4, he tells Kaladin. Go over there. Everyone else, you guys wait. I'll divide you up later. And so there's a big 8-foot wide, 30-foot long wooden bridge. And they carry it. There's actually 40 or 50 of these bridges. So there's a lot of people because it takes a lot of people to carry one bridge. And Gaz, when they walk up to Bridge 4, and Gaz is like, where's your bridge leader? And one of the guys goes, dead. Tossed himself down the honor chasm last night. Can't you keep a bridge leader for even a week? Well, now that we see what they do, I'm not surprised that nobody lasts that long.
It's like, oh my god, this horrible, like utterly humiliating and dangerous task. It's like people would rather kill themselves than do this. What the fuck?
Honestly, I assume some of them get killed during the bridge runs, but yeah. I don't think any bridge leader would survive long. It doesn't seem. So 35 to 40 men per bridge, and there's handholds, but it's hard to see, especially when you get stuck in the back like Kaladin does. And so they just run. All these guys carrying this bridge, and the guy standing next to him is like, you shouldn't have insulted Gaz. He sometimes lets new men run in an outside row. Sometimes. And he gives them the advice, breathe in and out, focus on the steps, count them. It helps. And so now he sees why everybody had these vests, these leather vests, because like the bridge weight is resting on your shoulders. They didn't give him one of those. So that sucks. And they didn't give him any shoes, which also is pretty messed up.
It's like, yeah, how many dudes running these bridges just like break their ankles because they can't see where they're going and just fall out the back?
Yeah, right.
That's got to be a pretty usual hazard for this kind of job.
So we have some permanent bridges that cross the chasms between the plateaus out here on the Shattered Plains. At first, there are permanent bridges. And they run, and they cross them. They cross the plateau. Then there's another bridge. They cross that, another plateau, and on and on. And the bridges are set up not in the most direct route anywhere, but where the plateaus are closest to each other. The chasms are narrowest, so it's easier to build the bridges there. So you can end up going like a bunch of different directions to get to the place you're going. And finally, they get to where the permanent bridges end, and Gaz yells, lift, drop, push, and they use their bridge to bridge the next gap between plateaus, and then they collapse from the hours of running with this giant bridge, and the army marches across the bridge. And then somebody important goes by, and Kaladin's like, is that the king? And he's like, no. If that was the king, that would mean we were in Bright Lord Dalinar's army. The best of men, the most honorable shard bearer in the king's army. They say he's never broken his word. And Kaladin's like, yeah, I heard that before. And so, yeah, Kaladin thinks that now that they've bridged this gap, they're going to turn around and go back. And the dude's like, oh, no, you're not done. We are not even close to done, because this is just one chasm. They need to go over a lot more. And so it says that they repeat this at least a dozen times. The army crosses their bridge. They have to go across, pick up the bridge, get to the other side of this new plateau before the army gets there, so they can put the bridge down and it will be ready when the army comes to cross. So it just continues to suck, is this job. But the worst part is when you arrive at your destination, because they finally get to where they're going, and Gaz is like, newcomers get to go first at this part, your lordship, and puts Kaladin in the front.
Finally, I've arrived. I'm at the front.
And he's like, at least I can see now. Jeez. And what he sees is that across the next chasm, over on the next plateau, there's a bunch of Parshendi lined up, and they are different from Parshmen that he can tell here. They've got orange armor on, and they're kind of bigger and tougher. He says that they're more solid. And we get one guy going, Talenelat Ilin, bearer of all agonies. This is going to be a bad one. They're already lined up.
Talenet was the guy from the Prelude that got left behind, the one who didn't abandon his sword, yeah?
That is what we have guessed, at least, yeah.
No, they say the name in the Prelude, Talenel. So they've just added some bits onto this.
They have.
Yeah. Bearer of all agonies, that sounds like the guy who was left in hell.
Right? It seems like an appropriate title based on the little that we know.
Yep, he's bearing all the agony, all right.
Man, what a title.
And so they have to run the bridge at this group of Parshendi, all bows ready, arrows knocked, ready to start shooting them down. Because this is the only way for the army to get across the chasm to fight the other guys, is to get these bridges down. And so, because obviously if you are the Parshendi on the other side of the chasm, you don't want the army getting across. They start shooting the bridgemen down as they run forward. The first wave of arrows kills the leathery-faced guy that has been giving Kaladin advice this whole time. So that sucks. And yeah, just arrows keep coming. People keep dying. It's horrific. And they seem to focus, like if they'll focus fire on certain bridges to try to shoot down enough of the carriers to make the bridge fall. But eventually they get there, and Gaz is like, lift and down, you fools. And they get the bridge shoved into position. And here comes a bunch of cavalry streaming across the bridge now that it's set, and not giving a shit if they run over any bridgeman who happens to be fallen in their way. And so the Parshendi managed to take down 4 bridges, but 16
Gotta say, I
had
feel like
been
the
placed.
archers on Kaladin's side took way longer than they should have to start firing back.
Right? Like, why not start firing earlier?
It's like, okay, we need the bridge to get across the chasm. The archers are killing our bridgemen. We should start shooting now.
But I mean, for all of the horror of running at them, I mean, like 16 of their 20 bridges made it into place. So that's pretty good numbers.
Yeah, I guess.
But that's also why you have like 30 people to a bridge, even though you only need like, I think what they say, like 20 to carry it, because then you can afford to lose 10 guys and your bridge will still make it. And so, yeah, he just passes out after this and is awoken by his friend, like, hey, Kaladin, get up. They're going to leave you. You're going to die. He's like, no, I don't want to go back. Just let me die. So this is hours later. He's just been passed out on the battlefield for hours. And he looks around and there's some guys walking around, some bridgemen walking around and shaking the dead bridgemen to see if they're alive. And then if they're not alive, they take their shoes and their vests. And Kaladin's like, yeah, they never would have checked me. I don't have anything for them to take. So this time the Spren had saved his life by getting him up before the entire army left. It appeared that Sadeas's forces had won. At least they didn't seem to be any Parshendi still alive. The plateau they'd fought on looked exactly the same as all the others they'd crossed, except there was a big lump of something in the center. Not sure what. And he asks, Spren, do you have a name? And she goes, yeah, I do have a name. Why do I have a name? How the hell should I know? And her name is Sylphrena. And then she goes, Syl. That's amusing. It appears I have a nickname. And he says, congratulations. And then Gaz spots Kaladin alive. And he's like, you. And then he points to the bridge for Kaladin to go pick it up. And that's when Kaladin's like, you gotta be kidding me. It's like, no, either carry the bridge or stay behind. And Kaladin realizes, oh, I was supposed to die out here. That's why he didn't care if I had a Vestor sandals to start with. He put me in front to die. I very rudely did not take him up on it. And one of the other bridgemen's like, it's okay. We can go slower now, and they'll give us lots of breaks. And some soldiers will help us. It takes at least 25 men to lift a bridge. And the chapter ends with Kaladin thinking that nothing could have been worse than what happened before. Losing all he had to the war, nothing more terrible than failing those he'd sworn to protect. It appeared he'd been wrong. There had been something more they could do to him. One final torment the world had reserved just for Kaladin, and it was called Bridge 4. That's not really fair. There's a bunch of people in Bridge 4. It's not just for you, but it does suck. I'll give you that. So yeah, those are our 2 chapters that we went through this time. Just as Joe said, funny stuff. Just a laugh riot from start to finish. Predicaments, though. Where are we going from here? What's going to happen with our 2 characters, at least, that we've seen, we're getting to know so far?
Yeah, look, I'm definitely predicting more comedy in the next set of chapters for sure. Yeah. No. So Kaladin, I think things might get a little worse before they get better for him. He seems, for lack of a better term, pretty well rock bottom at the moment, but I still don't think his surviving his first go with Bridge 4 is going to give him any points. I think with Gaz, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. I do hope that longer term he's able to kind of prove himself and work his way into a better area. Maybe to work into a better area, something catastrophically bad has to happen to the army before they'll let a marked slave that's considered dangerous anywhere near proper battle rather than just holding the bridge. I don't know. Maybe he'll help some soldiers on the field, but I reckon he's got a couple more Bridge 4 runs in him before something good happens to him. Shallan, I don't know whether she's going to annoy Jasnah enough to then make her accept her as a ward. I feel like there's going to be some more involvement between those 2 characters for a little while. Obviously, she's running down the corridor to be like, well, I'm gonna annoy you until you give me what I want. But we already know that she doesn't really respond well to tantrums and speaking out of turn. So I don't know how that's really going to go for her, but I hope she gets a little bit more, I guess, covert. I'm really curious to see what her plan is to be in place if she doesn't get taken on as a ward. I don't know how she's going to steal it. I don't know what she needs it for. They found the Soulcaster in her father's pocket. I assume when like once he had died. So there's no ability to sort of ask questions there. I don't feel like we know enough about that magic just yet to sort of make decisions, but I'd be curious to know whether the stones were the same or if everyone had different stones. She made a comment that like breaking open or transforming the rock was going to like cost a ruby or something? There was
Yeah, she said a valuable focus stone. I think she may have said a smoke stone, but I don't recall for sure.
Yeah, maybe the stones in the dad's soul casters have been depleted. So maybe it is functional, but it needs more empowered stones, perhaps. And stealing another soul caster would be able to do that. I don't know how easy it would be able to come across those particular stones to make that work or that level of power. But yeah, my first instinct was that they needed the stones to do something with that. But there's also then levels of soul caster as well, which it sounds like she's pretty high up at the moment. So I feel like if the dad was so talented as well, then that would probably be a known thing. Maybe they're a family of thieves. Maybe they stole their way to a higher standing or something. And well, obviously they're having to repair their reputation and pay off a whole lot of debt. So who knows? Maybe the dad stole the soul caster.
I mean, like father, like daughter. That would be an interesting,
Yeah, I don't know. I'll fix all my problems by stealing this soul caster. Oh wait, it doesn't work. Well, better go find another one.
I like your thought that it's like, is she going to be able to annoy Yasna into accepting her? Like, does Yasna seem like someone you could just annoy until you get your way? I don't know.
Yeah, given I just don't think she would respond well to that, given how she took to her, or some comments that she made about Dallin's plight. It was like, well, you didn't throw a tantrum, so that's good. Like, I feel like her patience is probably, or her tolerance is quite low. So she's going to have to figure out another way to worm in there. Like, be annoying, but not so annoying that she doesn't just move on and not tell you where she's going.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good thought. And I also like you're like, is there a backup plan if you can't become her ward? Because you might need one of those.
Yeah. Yep, that's a real possibility.
I guess we shall see.
I guess she thought she had it already, so.
Right, yeah. She thought she had this sewn up. She might not have spent 6 months chasing her if she didn't think it was already a done deal.
Yeah.
Where we're going to go. Yeah, I feel like Shallan is going to do her best to worm into Yasna. I don't know how that's going to take, but long term, I think she is going to get a hold of this soulcaster and she's going to just go on the run trying to get back with it. Because of course Yasna's going to know who took it, so Yasna will be coming in hot pursuit. But there are if what Shallan thought was accurate, there are people out there who are pissed that Yasna had it. So she'll probably Shallan will probably have Yasna's enemies coming after her as well, seeing it as an opportunity to get the damn thing back. So yeah, I look forward to to the chase. That should be interesting, and then it can have all the wonderful adventures of her trying to figure out how to use it and seeing those go awry. So that'll be fun. Kaladin, I get the feeling Gaza is gonna hang him out to dry again. I actually had the thought, it's like maybe he'll get captured by the Parshmen somehow. Like Gaza thinks they'll kill him, but like the Parshmen for whatever reason decide to just take him along. And so he's like, oh great, first I was a slave, then I was a bridgeman, now I'm a prisoner of war captured by the Darth Maul looking folk. And then to his surprise, they actually treat him better than his own people did.
You know, it wouldn't take much for them to treat him better than his own people are treating him. That's
it's a very low bar to meet, but nonetheless, I like the idea of doing that because I want to know more about these people.
Oh, the Parshendi? Yeah.
Yeah.
We know very little of them except that they had Seth murder the king at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, and in my head, I just picture them as like a race of Darth Mauls.
No, yeah, I can kind of see it with the whole marbled red and black look. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Red and black skin going on. I mean, yeah, that's really the only description we've gotten.
They apparently wear orange armor, so that's an additional description we got today. But
cool.
Doesn't really fit Darth Maul. I don't think he would wear orange armor, but maybe. I mean, you know, whatever. You do.
Maybe if he had a sense of some goddamn style. Black robes are done, man.
No, who was it? What was it? It's an Elantris where we find out how ugly Orange is.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, good times. Says, and then the Sunlit Man, isn't that orange or is it red? I don't know. I haven't actually gotten the book in my hand yet.
I
The
haven't
book
either.
The book itself is red.
Okay.
Also,
Fair enough.
the trim on the pages is black.
Ooh. Very,
Yeah.
very nice.
Ah, well, Shallan, I think she's gonna still have some. She's gonna somehow ingratiate herself with Jasna. Either that, or just keep chasing her around. And then maybe she's gonna find out that she actually does want to learn stuff from her, especially if she sees this magic power go on and on. And yeah, I think Jamie made a good point. It's like, even if you get this thing, like, are you gonna know what to do with it? So like, are you just gonna sell it? Is that all it is? It's just a piece of equipment that's valuable, so you're gonna sell it because you know it works. But I don't know, since the one they found on their dad doesn't work, it made me think that maybe if it was his, that like somehow it dies with the bearer. So maybe it's like attuned to the person that wears it, and it can't be like reattuned. But I don't know. So yeah, I don't have a lot going on with Shallan that I know about. Yeah, I think, but like I said earlier in the episode, I think Kaladin's he's gonna win Gaz over somehow. And whether that's just because he keeps surviving, or because he's kind of, it's funny, Kaladin as a bridge carrier guy is kind of in the same boat as the kid from like the first chapter. He's in a combat situation where he doesn't know what's going on. He has no idea how this works. He's now experienced it, and if his past is any indication of his ability to learn and do things better, I would guess that he's going to become the best bridge carrier that they have, and then somehow raise himself through those ranks. Although I would say a certain amount of it does seem to be luck, because if you're on the front when they're shooting arrows, you just kind of have to get lucky, because it's not like you can jump out from under the bridge when they're shooting at you. Which I think he kind of made that point. It's like he'd always been good in combat, but this was like he's just charging in as like a pig to slaughter. Like there's nothing he can do to make his situation better in that instance. But maybe he'll come up, maybe being so good at the job, he'll come up with some super fancier way to do it, which will protect the guys doing it better. I don't know. That's just a guess, a predicament, if you will. But yeah, I'm like I said, I'm a big fan of this book so far, even though we're not that far in. It's keeping my interest, and so I'm very excited to read the next section.
You make a good point about the being like we learned that Kaladin was the only guy on the front line of his bridge not to die this time. So
yeah,
it's it is luck of the draw. Although people always said back in the army that he was lucky. He was storm blessed, so maybe that's why he survived.
Ooh, yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe this wind sprint's been falling around his whole life, and he just didn't know. She makes him lucky because it was.
He's got
the reason,
some of Vin's luck.
Yeah, well, he was the wind sprint was the reason that he even got up out of the rock floor, or rock ground to begin with. Otherwise, they would have left him behind. So
it's true. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Like I said, going in, I was like, I'm worried the show might be like, no, this is depressing me. I don't want to read this anymore. So I was just thinking, I'm like, okay, let me cover what the predicaments have been today. So Jamie thinks Shallan is collecting Infinity Stones for her gauntlet. That's what Dak thinks that Kaladin is going to make friends with a bunch of Parshendi and hang out with them. Also good prediction. And Joe thinks that this is going to turn into like the Kaladin and Gaz BFF show. So all interesting possibilities. Let me see. For next time, we'll just hit that. We're going to read 2 more chapters, 7 and 8. And before you get to thinking that it's going to be short, small numbers of chapters all the time, in the next episode after that, we're going to read 6 chapters. So there.
Good goddamn.
So prepare for that. So yeah, 2 chapters for next time, 7 and 8. Let's do we have a bunch of emails because we kind of saved some up from last time also. And I already read one, so we'll probably save some more also since we spent so long on one of them already. But let me hit a couple of these since we don't have any patrons, any new reviews or anything this week. So we got time for a few emails. This one says it's titled Sanderlanche Podcast from Sam. Hello, Dak, Data, Jamie, and Joe. Now that I finally caught up, I figured it was time to email in. I've been listening to the show since December of last year after I read The Final Empire for the first time, and I needed more Mistborn content. Following along with you guys, as I've had my own Sanderson journey, has been a true joy. I enjoy your predictions, whether they be scarily close or another volcano theory, and they make the show wildly entertaining. You've even changed my own thoughts on certain aspects of the books, namely Spook. Joe has thoroughly convinced me from not caring about him to hating him. Or, I'm sorry, thoroughly converted me from not caring about him to hating him.
Yeah. I mean, if there's anything you want to do, it's go for being apathetic to hate. You know, you want to have a strong emotion one way or another.
Let's talk about Warbreaker, though. Of all the Cosmere works I've read, this is definitely the weakest in my opinion, which is a shame because I think it has some of the most interesting magic Brandon has written, as well as the potential to have a great influence on his future works. Undoubtedly, the best parts of Warbreaker are Vasher and Nightblood. I agree with Dak and Joe that if the magic were better explained, it would help the story overall, versus Elantris, where not understanding the magic was the point of the mystery. I don't mind the bad pacing nearly as much as I read through it fairly quickly, but I did hate being confused all the way through. Even when I finished, Vasher's explanation does little to really explain Awakening, and really just leaves me with more questions than I started with. Hopefully this is better explained in the sequel if we ever actually get it. I'm excited for you all to begin Stormlight, and I'm looking forward to your reactions and crazy theories. Roshar has some of the most fantastical and iconic locations in the Cosmere, such as the Shattered Plains, and the story that takes place there is truly fantastic. I also look forward to your opinions on some of the more controversial aspects of Stormlight, which I won't spoil what he's calling controversial, although there is at least one character we already know that he's proposing here, as I feel like we may have another Spook on our hands. Thank you for the great podcast and for being part of my Sanderson journey. Wasn't to the time of fixed.
Big call there.
Yeah, calling out a Spook. But this person actually did send us a screenshot of their Spotify 5-star review. So I said we had no new reviews. I'd forgotten that in this email there was a screenshot of a review.
I see. So now I'm just supposed to give him some kind of mystic power, huh?
Yep, for Sam.
All right, Sam. You know what? You could be what old wow, I can't even remember his name. It hadn't been that long. What old Waxilium Ladrian is. You could be a Queen Shot.
That's always a good one. Very, very utilitarian. Yeah. Okay. The next email is from Oliver. And Oliver says, I've been thoroughly enjoying the podcast. Started listening a month ago, and I'm now on the final epilogue of the Wax and Wayne series of books. Anyway, I was curious what each of your favorite movies were. Personally, mine is Lord of the Rings 2 Towers. Anyway, keep up the stellar podcast, and hi, future me. Favorite movies?
I feel like anytime somebody asks me that question, it's too difficult to answer. So I usually have to unfortunately in a podcast setting, I don't have the luxury to be like, well, why don't you pick a genre and then I'll try to narrow one down.
Right. How do you pick just one favorite movie or book?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll just go with. No, I don't even know where to start. I think we've had this question on the podcast before too.
It's possible.
I think I've definitely brought up my favorite movie before. That is In Bruges.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, we've talked about that one for sure. Yep.
My second favorite is Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh wow.
Really? Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Very different movie.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like I've had different favorite movies at different parts of my life. You know. So if I'm gonna pick one, I go to my wall of movies because I still have a lot of physical media. I would say I wouldn't say it's going back and rewatching it. I wouldn't say it's a fantastic movie. Let me rephrase that. I wouldn't say it's the most amazing movie ever, but it is a fantastic movie. I say the reason I'm picking this one is because it had a really big influence on me when it came out. When I was a teenager, is probably Garden State. It's a good movie.
Interesting. Okay. I don't think I've actually seen that. Yeah.
It's definitely like a thinking, kind of deep, depressing kind of movie, but as a teen who's very angsty, it fed my soul.
Sure.
That's fair.
What do you got, Jamie?
The one I always come back to is Apollo 13.
I think you've mentioned that too. I remember hearing that from you.
Yeah. It's that there's so many good movies. It is difficult to choose. And it kind of depends on what sort of mood you're in, but that's one that I could always, if someone said, hey, we're going to watch this, I would always be happy to watch it.
Well, you make a point of watching that one at least every 6 months. So that would definitely make it a if not the favorite, then a front runner for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a great story of how in the face of, potential disaster, seeing the best of humankind come together to get people home and get them home safely. And it always makes me a bit emotional, even though I know exactly how the story is going to go. And I watched it a million times. I always still get a little bit teary when they actually sign off. Tom Hanks is coming out of the capsule and is like, that's us done. It's every time.
That's nice.
Doesn't mean you got Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, and Bill Paxton in a box. Like that's just gold right there.
Oh, the cast is phenomenal. Ed Harris does an incredible job, and
Yep.
He plays Gene Kranz, the flight director. And if you ever watch the actual footage of Gene Kranz in an interview, and then he got really emotional, and Ed Harris studied him and replicated that. And I just think the job that he did portraying that role in particular was just incredible.
Honestly, I haven't watched that in forever. I should go back and watch that again. That's one of those movies that's like, especially back when it came out, it was like, well, you have to see this movie. It's like everyone is talking about this movie.
Yeah.
And so, but I don't know that I've gone back and watched it since then, honestly. So probably should. I'm a very different person now than I was when that movie came out.
Mm-hmm. The movie's great. The book's really good too. Apollo 13. It was previously titled Lost Moon, but it's a very, very good read. Some extra information from Jim Lovell in there. So if anyone's a space fan, definitely hit those up.
Neat. Favorite movies from. So I went out to my Letterboxd page where I've got recorded most of the movies that I've seen and the ratings, and I was like, okay, what movies have I rated 5 stars? That would be my maximum rating. One of those would probably count as my favorite. And so I've rated very few movies at the maximum of 5 stars. And so I'll just throw out a couple of them so you guys can get the gamut that I've got going on here. So Avengers: Infinity War, I have it 5 stars. Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yep.
Serenity.
That is a good one.
Star Trek First Contact. My favorite Star Trek movie, clearly. The miniseries Taken I have on here is 5 stars because it's an incredible miniseries that the Sci-Fi Channel did in the early 2000s. Love that. The Brothers Bloom. Great movie.
That one, yeah, that was. I've seen it. It was interesting. I think it didn't quite grab me as much as some of Rian Johnson's other movies, but it was an excellently made movie. But I got to the end and I thought, okay, probably have to see it again to really collect my thoughts on it.
Yeah, it wasn't even I saw it when it was in theaters, but it wasn't very big even at the time. It was in one of the less nice theaters in town on one screen, and I was just I haven't even heard of it. I was like, let's go check this out while we're looking for a movie to see, and it really connected with me. I really loved it, but obviously, different strokes. So
Sure.
Yeah, that's the kind of movies that I have on my list. So thank you for the question, Oliver. That was a fun. We don't often get to take, although clearly we have taken that particular side trip at times before, but we don't get to depart from the topic of the show in that way a whole lot. Oliver also sent us a screenshot of their 5-star Spotify review. So.
Why does this keep happening to me?
Oh, and I actually skipped. I'm sorry, Oliver. I skipped that the beginning says greetings from Wales.
Oh, hey.
So Welsh friend.
That's cool. Our origin is Welsh as well. Back in the way back.
I'll take your word.
Yeah, we're Welsh. Just so you know. We're Irish, Scottish, Welsh. And so, you, my friend, from Wales, you can be a thug.
Look it up. All right. Let's do one more email, and then we'll wrap it. This one is from Steph, and it's titled Newish Listener. Hi, Sanderlanche crew. I've been listening to your podcast for the last couple of months, and I'm now about halfway through your Warbreaker episodes. I found this podcast when I decided to reread all Cosmere works, and it is fantastic. I enjoy this show too much, as I've tried to pace myself so I don't run out of episodes too quickly, which is impossible. Keep up the good work. This podcast always puts me in a good mood. Listening to the time of next. Colo? From Steph. That's always fun to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, it's cool. You really chugged through those episodes as well.
Right? Yeah. And that's with trying to pace yourself, apparently. So.
Yeah. You have to pace yourself. Carbohydrate is important. Pasta is good. Yeah. Rat race.
So yes, thank you guys. If anyone wants to send an email like those folks did, the address is thesanderlanche@gmail.com. We're on Instagram and X and Patreon, where my reactions to The Sunlit Man are going up. I actually need to edit another one of those for Tuesday, or there won't be anything up. And I'm bad. I've fallen off of. I read I've read through chapter what? Let me look. I've read through chapter 21 of, like, I think there's 50 some odd chapters in that book, and I got distracted by things, so I need to go back and do some more. And then I accidentally spoiled myself on a detail from that book because our good friend Reynos / Reaper on the Discord was reading through himself, and he has his own little thread that's like his read through, and I did not mute it in time despite knowing that he was going to get past me because I hadn't read lately, and I got spoiled on something by having that Discord topic up. My own fault. I knew better, but so that'll teach me to actually just finish reading the book when it comes out. Usually I would be done with the book instantly, more or less. Like, I would read it in a day or two, but when I have to take time out to sit and record my reactions, it slows me down. So yeah,
that'll do it.
2 chapters for next time, 7 and 8. Music by Miracle of Sound, and Wasing to the Time of Next. Colo, P.S. Vasher, Crab at Thee. I remembered it that time.
Yay! Gotta say that
Crab at thee.
Crabs Ahoy was pretty fucking funny last time.
Was it Crabs Ahoy?
Listeners, do you prefer Crab at Thee or Crabs Ahoy? Let us know.
Because he screwed it up and said Crabs Ahoy by mistake.
Yep. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.